For Monday, the 19th of February, I'm Randy Kure. This is What's Up the Sports Podcast. We are live on YouTube at What's Up Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Or if you are catching tonight's episode via your favorite podcatcher. On tonight's episode, we will get into the Morgan Rielly suspension and whether the league was justified in banning the veteran blue liner for 5 games. The safety of hockey continues to make circles after the on-ice death of a former NHL player in England. In rapid fire, Bank of Montreal will be visible throughout the city of Los Angeles. Could the president and GM duo of Shapiro and Atkins see its last days for the Toronto Blue Jays? And could the outdoor NHL Stadium Series lose its luster after a little while? Joining me for the roundtable this evening, once again, is Tony Antoniou. Tony, how are you?
Good, Randy. Yourself?
And can't complain. Familiar face to What's Up the Sports Podcast is sports aficionado and friend to the show, Chris Carrabs, is here. Chris, good to see you again.
Great to be here, Randy. Good to see you. How you doing?
Doing well. Thank you so much. And repping the red, white, and blue from his hometown on Long Island, New York. Catch him at Jake Cardinale 6. Jake Cardinale has returned. And Jake, as I hope you are doing well, I do want to acknowledge that it is President's Day in the United States. And on behalf of us three from the province of Ontario, Jake, it is a long weekend here. So happy Family Day to you and yours. How's it going?
Thank you. Pretty good. My school still holds classes today, but I don't have class on Monday, so it was basically a day off me anyway.
Oh, okay. So what is open on President's Day? Like, are all the malls open and so on? Like,
I know the mall over here is open. It's not a huge thing. It was bigger when I was in high school because I got off from school, so that kind of made me happy. Now that I don't, I don't really pay attention. But again, I'll have class Monday, so it's
okay
for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, Chris is an educator as well, so I mean, if he was living in your country, I mean, sure, it'd be President's Day, but I guess he would have to hit the office there. But before we get started, guys, I mean, it is a long weekend, for lack of a better term, I guess. I mean, now Jake fed me with this information. I don't know if you want to call it a long weekend in the U.S., but I was thinking, because it's a long weekend, at least here in Ontario, and I believe most of Canada, like, have you ever thought about a sporting event where you needed that day off to have that extra long weekend, Tony? I mean, you and I have seen ourselves at BMO Field all those times watching Toronto FC or Canada's national team. I mean, I know I have one too many all the time and could definitely use that rest and relaxation. But, before we get into it, fellas, I mean, is there a sporting event in particular where you either need the day off to tailgate or the day after to recover?
I guess for me would be either the Super Bowl or the World Cup final, obviously. I mean, the Super Bowl is the obvious answer because you tend to have a party more, but the World Cup final for me and, my surroundings and the people I hang out with is a big deal as well. We get together and watch it. So that would be a big one for me. I usually need to take the day off the next day.
I'm assuming the same thing goes for you when it comes to Euro.
And fortunately, there's enough sick days on my docket at the hospital where I can make it happen pretty quick.
Good for you. Chris, what about yourself? I mean, as a teacher, you're a big sports fan. And I mean, obviously, being at school on the Monday is pretty much a compulsory for yourself. But when it comes to the big game, I mean, is there days on that Monday morning that you may need extra couple hours of Z's?
Well, yeah, for me, most of the time in a regular World Cup or a Euro year, school's not impacted when you get to that. So that I'm usually off the next day there. But usually with this is actually the first Super Bowl in a while. I didn't pre-COVID. I'd always go out for Super Bowl. Like buddies, we play and touch football during the day. You know, be a long drawn out affair, and then Super Bowl by the time it starts, it's a pretty late night, right? So, you know, usually Monday would be nice to you be sort of dragging your feet into work, regardless of how much you ate or drank. But I think even in my younger years, I took a couple of Michigan trips and going down to the big house, and even if it's a Saturday game, by Monday you're feeling it as well. So I think anytime you take in a major sporting event, and if you do it for the first time, like if you go down to an American football game like that, and you're tailgating down there over 100,000, and you know you're going to take it in and you're going to enjoy it to the greatest ability. But yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they sure do know how to put out a good event, and especially when it comes to football Sundays. I mean, Jake, I'm sure you've experienced one or two. I'm not sure if you're a big drinker, but when it comes to Monday morning, or when it comes to watching your beloved Mets or your Rangers or anything any team that holds near and dear to your heart, I mean, is there a time, is there a day, an event where you're wishing that you could just sleep in the next day?
For me, it's the Super Bowl. For me, I don't know why the next day after the Super Bowl, the next Monday, is not National Hangover Day. It needs to be. that needs to be a thing. Look, I don't drink actually, so it's not as big of a deal for me. But you know, I'm still, you know, just the rush you get. You know, the next morning, it's not over. So like somebody needs to make that a thing in the at least in the United States and probably the entire country.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was watching breakfast television here in Toronto the day after the Super Bowl, and the host, Jake, is a former sportscaster, and he went over to morning television, and he said, why can't why can't this family day long weekend be follow the day after the Super Bowl? And there's definitely a lot of value to it. I mean, I'm sure people in the Canadian Football League must be like, hey, what about us? Because, hey, Grey Cup is the national event here in Canada, but that's another story for another day. But, you know, speaking of big events, guys, the All-Star weekend has come and gone, both in the NHL and the NBA. The NBA All-Star weekend just wrapped up in Indianapolis, and, of course, the NHL All-Star weekend took place here in Toronto a couple weeks ago. And Tony, being an employee of Scotiabank Arena, was a part of the festivities. Tony, how was the experience? I mean, you did work the NBA All-Star game, if I'm not mistaken, in 2016. And
Yes.
tell us how was the experience, your duties, and how Toronto did as a whole?
Well, most importantly, it was not even close to being as cold as the NBA All-Star weekend was. That was minus 20 every day, and it was hilarious watching guys walking in with these giant mink coats. And I was working in the bowels of the ship, so to speak, so it was constantly cold down there. There was no give. Like it's just naturally the doors kept opening and people were coming in and out of the receiving area and what have you. So thankfully the weather was warm, but my duties were pretty simple. I kept the media um, well hydrated with coffee and pop and water, and that was pretty much my gig. But it was cool. It was a cool experience. It wasn't as huge as the NBA All Star Game, obviously, because you know when you're at the NBA All Star Game, you're bumping into Barack Obama, right? Um, just just to name a few of prominent figures where you're not going to get that at the NHL All Star Game. I mean, there's only so much Will Arnett you can handle when we know he's a Leaf fan and blah blah blah. Gives a shit. But Justin Bieber played a role there, but it's still cool. You're bumping into people all the time. You know, I turned to my right and there was PK Subban and Mark Messier, ESPN's home base where they did all their interviews was located where I work, so that was kind of cool. It was a cool experience. Lanny McDonald, and it was nice for me because I'm a big media guy. Obviously, that's why we took media in school, Randy. So you get to see
Sure.
some of the who's who of the hockey media who you spend time reading and listening to, and so you have some conversations with them. So it was a good experience. I didn't get to watch anything really, and I didn't really care to watch anything because All-Star games are meaningless to me. Um, Other than that, it was good, and it was great money. So that was the most important thing.
Hey, definitely a win for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
Chris, I mean, I for one didn't watch a single second of the All-Star game or the skills competition, whether it was the NBA or the NHL mid-season classic there. I mean, what about yourself? I mean, did you catch any of the festivities at all?
So NHL, nothing live. I watched a few highlights, but to me, I look at the comparison between NHL and NBA. I think in terms of the stars. So now this year, because it was in Toronto, you had all the big Leafs there, but a lot of years the NHL players make a decision to skip out, right? Obviously things going on, Panarin with family, etc. In past years of Atkins, like NBA, all the stars are there at all times, right? Now the game itself and the format they follow, maybe it makes it a little bit more exciting, having less players on the ice. But this, like Tony said, it doesn't mean anything, right? Last year when I believe it was in Florida and they tried the outlet with the beach, et cetera, like it clearly didn't work. And they changed back to the format where it was at this year. I do like the fact that they came up with different ideas where they had they basically had a group competition, multiple players, and put some money on the line. But like this kind of money doesn't really mean a lot to the players themselves. But then at least those players had something to strive towards. Now, if we go back to the NBA All-Star game, the dunk contest needs to do something because everybody knew McClung was going to win, and there really wasn't a lot to it. It was Jaylen Brown was being a good sport to participate, but I think if you have a combination, dunk contest has to do something. But I like how the NBA actually takes some non-All-Stars and brings them in. You're going to have the hardest shot competition. Why not have like internal competitions on a team? And some of these players that are clearly like Cale Makar's got a hard shot, but does he have the hardest shot in the NHL? He's an all-star, right? So if we're going to talk about hardest shot competition, McDavid's a fast skater. We know that. We probably think he's the fastest skater in the league, but he doesn't skate against other players that may not have the same kind of skill set as him that don't get the minutes he does. So if you're going to make it about that kind of a competition, I think that would be an interesting outlet. We're not talking about in the days where, the fans vote in players that, don't have any business being, the John Scotts of the All-Star game, right?
Of course.
So, right. It's one of those things like, I get it. You have the festivities. I like how they did the captains and they sort of did that with like the celebrity coaches, but same thing I said, like, I don't want to see Will Arnett anymore, right? I don't want to see Bieber anymore either, right? Like, well, what's her name? Is it Haley McRae? Like, is that what her name is? I don't know what her name
Tate
was.
Tate McRae.
Tate McRae.
Now she actually surprised me. She was good. Like her performance. I listened to her rehearse for about an hour in the morning prior to the game because I was there that early, and she was a lot better than I expected. I didn't know who the hell she was.
I still don't.
My daughter's
girl.
Right. So
She's a pretty girl. That's about it. That's all. I don't know a single one of her songs.
She's very pretty, and she's actually pretty good live. And my daughter's played a couple of songs, and I'm like, oh, that's right, this song, because they're in charge of the radio when I'm in the car and when I'm driving around. And so like, oh, so that's her. So she was okay. So I don't want to disparage her. She she needs to smile more, but other than that, she was, young, pretty girl. She seems to have a legit voice.
She seems to have some appreciation for hockey as well. I mean, I think I caught some highlights, and she was at a Flames game. I think she's from the Calgary area or something. But Jake, I mean, not really so much interested if you were a Tate McRae fan, but
I know what it is.
You don't know who that is? Google her. I mean,
Tate McRae.
yeah, Tate McRae. Yeah, she's good old Canadian gal. But I mean, the truth is, Jake. I mean, I think it's fair for me to say with Tony and Chris that we saw a lot more effort in all-star games from years past, whether it is hockey, basketball, baseball. I mean, I'm sure Tony and Chris can remember seeing the highlights of Pete Rose crashing into Ray Fosse during an all-star game and being a big baseball fan. Maybe you know about it as well. I mean, however, the all-star game, the competition is what it is, and it is nowhere near close to the real thing. If you had to choose between scrapping the all-star game altogether or dividing it from conference to conference and have the winning conference host game 7 of the championship series, what would you think would be more appealing for you?
More appealing to me is just to scrap the whole thing. Every All-Star game just completely bores me to death. The NBA, all I watched was the dunk contest, and it was really lame. I didn't expect anything else. The dunk contest has not been good since 2016. It peaked with Aaron Gordon and Zach LaVine. Since then, we haven't even had a even somewhat competent dunk contest to me. Last year it was okay when Mac won the first time. I mean, look at the guys he had doing it. He had 2 G Leaguers this year. A G Leaguer won 2 years in a row. A guy who's not even good enough to be in the NBA has won 2 years in a row. I'll tell you all you need to know. Didn't watch the 3-point thing or the skills thing. I didn't watch the Sabrina Ionescu versus Steph thing. I didn't watch anything else. I didn't watch the All-Star game. 211 points that he scored. Like, that's crazy. Didn't watch a single second of the NHL stuff. The only thing I saw for the NHL, one of my roommates, he was like watching a clip of it on his phone. I like peed on his phone. I was like, "Whoa, what you doing?" He was like, "Oh, I'm watching the NHL All-Star game." I was like, "Don't care. I'm just gonna go back to watching my television show that I was watching at the time." But yeah, the game, NHL All-Star game is extremely boring. The first couple games, like they have the semifinals, like it was like 10-8 or 15-12. Like this isn't football. This is hockey. Like the finals in the NHL All-Star game, usually a little better, but still, I'm not moved at all. The NBA one sucks. The Pro Bowl is a complete joke. Now it's not even a game. It's flag football. I might as well put me out there. I used to be pretty good at flag football back in the day. Just throw me out there at that point. The only All-Star game that actually works is the MLB All-Star game because there's really no way for you not to try. Almost like the pitcher just lobs it up there. The hair purposely misses it, but then that would just bore the players to death, obviously. That's the only one that works. All the other ones, just get rid of them. Just give us the skill stuff. If the best players in the world, playing against each other, can't move anybody and is this boring and is this pathetic, there's no point even having the game. So just scrap it.
So how far off would I be to award Game 7 of that sports championship series to the winning conference of the All-Star game? I mean, money is not an issue. Money, it doesn't allure players to bring in more effort. So, I mean, I think that baseball had something by awarding home field advantage to the winner of the All-Star game. The problem is that baseball seemed to be the most competitive out of the 4. But I mean, when it comes to hockey and basketball, it's not an even schedule. I mean, one conference is usually stronger than the other one, and each team is not playing the same team the same number of times. So the schedule is already tilted. Why not have best on best, and the best conference gets Game 7? I don't see what the problem is.
For me, the issue is, okay, let's say you put it in the NBA. If I'm, Jalen Brunson or, Karl Anthony Towns, 2 guys who play for teams that could be, in the conference finals or the finals, that's really, really intriguing. But if I'm someone from the Brooklyn Nets or the Charlotte,
or Scotty Barnes,
someone like that, I
Careful, Tony. That hurts.
Less about
just saying.
Like if I'm a team that's not competing for a championship. Even if you're LeBron, do you care? The Lakers are not going to the finals. I'm sorry, they're not. LeBron's not the same guy anymore. Anthony Davis is going to get hurt. The team isn't
He
that
played
good.
13 minutes last night, LeBron. That's what he played.
These guys don't care. They're just there to have fun. It's just stupid. Like, yes, maybe if you're a top guy on a top team, maybe you care.
Define
Also,
top team though, Jake. I mean, hey, the eighth seeded Heat made it to the final.
That's happened twice in NBA history. 1, 2. That happened in '99 with the Knicks. That was a weird year. Jordan had just retired. The Bulls weren't the same. Pippen's knees were given out. The Knicks went on the crazy run of didn't have Patrick Ewing on a crazy run. And last year, the Heat were a team that we knew going into the year looked like they're going to be really good. We're coming off a conference finals trip. And the entire year struggled, but then all of a sudden they clicked in the playoffs. That very rarely happens. I don't expect that to happen again. Besides the MLB playoff, that's a whole different story. Obviously, the way that they're formatted. To me, that doesn't do anything just because unless you're one of the top 12 teams in the NBA out of 30, you really don't care. If I play for even the Sacramento Kings, I don't really think they're going to the final. Also, they're going to try. But for me, I think that's dumb. Just scrap it. These All-Star games, they're so boring. For example, the MLB All-Star game, when you had it, yes, it was interesting. Ever since they took it away, it hasn't, to me, it hasn't changed.
Yeah. It hasn't changed anything. But, Tony, I mean, what do you think? I mean, the effort may change, especially in basketball and hockey.
Honestly, I think always talking about how to change the All-Star game is the bigger problem. Who gives a shit? It's a corporate event for the most part. I think the NHL is planning this 4-nation best on best tournament next year instead of the All-Star game. And that's okay. That's a pretty good idea. I still think it's tainted because you don't have Russia participating in it. So any hockey tournament that doesn't involve Russia, I can't even be. There's no chance I'm calling it a best on best. It's not best on best. It's bullshit. So I'm not buying it. But however, the conversation every year about trying to change an All-Star game is more tired than actually watching All-Star games, to be honest with you. I'm so sick of it. I could care less. Just let it happen. It's a corporate event. Listen, I saw lots of families down there. Kids were enjoying themselves. The Fan Fest thing as well. I mean, I was hitting the train on a Saturday morning of the All-Star game. I was on the train at 8 o'clock in the morning. There's lots of families there, so they're heading down to the All-Star Fest, and they're enjoying themselves there. You're running into different players from yesteryear, alumni guys. So that's what it's all about.
The question is, was there an Oliver Bjorkstrand jersey? Was there a Bjorkstrand jersey?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Every team needs a player. This is the problem as well. NHL, every team needs a player, right?
But there probably was.
What does he care about, having Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final? Columbus Blue Jackets.
Why does the Kansas need a player in the All-Star game? No.
It's like the Pittsburgh Pirate representative of the MLB All-Star game. He's not an idiot. He knows he's not getting a spot in the World Series final, right?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of jerseys, I mean, did you guys see the Leon Draisaitl jersey at the Super Bowl? That was really random.
Who wore that?
Some fan.
Was it one of the players?
Was
it a fan?
No, a fan. I caught on Instagram that
apparently Devin Booker showed up during All-Star Weekend with an Yzerman jersey on. I heard that. I read that on Twitter somewhere.
Was he in Detroit?
That's kind of cool. Is he from Detroit? I don't know.
No. Was Devin Booker playing in Detroit?
No. I think it was All-Star Weekend. He walked into, with an Yzerman jersey on. So that was kind of cool.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's always rocking hockey jerseys when he's entering the arena as well. So, anyway, I mean, Tony may be right, but I don't know. It's always intriguing to me to have this kind of conversation. I just think that the All-Star game just has always missed in terms of really rolling out a great product for their midseason event. But anyway, life goes on. But I mean, life is taking a different turn for Morgan Rielly, fellas. Of course, the big news around Leafland is that the veteran D-man has been suspended after late game cross-check on Ridley Gregg of the Ottawa Senators. I mean, a lot of fans didn't think that Rielly was going to be suspended for so long because of his clean record, but he did get a 5-game sit down. I mean, Jake, love to get your thoughts on this one. Of course, you being in the New York area, you're a Rangers fan. I mean, what did you think of the Rielly suspension? Did you think it was justified?
Absolutely. So the guy on the other team, it's an empty net. He goes and slams it into the net. And then Morgan Rielly is, butthurt because he's on the most cursed franchise in all of sports, going to lose in the first round yet again.
Be
Spoiler
gentle.
alert, it's not a spoiler, it's a prediction, as Paul Heyman would say. And he
We
goes
won a
over
round.
Like this guy.
and just completely crush-sucks the guy in the head. Absolute dirty play. If I was the guy who's got hit, teammate, I would have knocked him into the 5th row. Complete scumbag move. Pond scum of the earth move. Absolutely deserved 5 games. Just pathetic, and absolutely terrible.
Sorry, just the pond scum move was the cross check or okay, yeah. I just want to be on the same page here, but yeah, I mean, look, obviously was a slap shot necessary? Of course not. I mean, I completely hear what you're saying, Jake, about how butthurt Morgan Rielly was, although that was kind of a shot at your boy over here because I am a Leaf fan, but don't worry about it. However, the reality is that a lot of people within fans and media didn't think that Morgan Rielly was going to get a 5-game suspension. I mean, Chris, you and I were chatting about it, in the days leading up to tonight, and you were thinking that it was going to be 3 games. Is 5 the right number, however?
Yeah, well, see, being a Leaf fan, so you're listening to both sides. So all the Leaf fans say it's ridiculous, it shouldn't be a suspension. All non-Leaf fans say, "Oh, give him 10, give him the book. It doesn't matter, right?" It's sort of one of those situations. And I've been a Rielly fan for a while. I actually have a Rielly jersey, but the reality is, whether there's anything going on after the play, he didn't like the move, but drop your gloves at least. Why do you got to take a stick to the side of the neck? That's the only part. And realize they're really incorporating the headshots into the league recently, and they're trying to send a message to people. So it shouldn't be about repeat offenders, okay? And they're making a comparison. But here's the maddest thing about it is a guy who played in the league for 10 years, 18 career goals, thousands of penalty minutes, is in charge of deciding what the suspensions are, right? George Parros is in charge. So I knew that he was in charge. I knew he was going to get a suspension of multiple games. Now, I figured, it'd be at least 3. Now it's about 5, and there's no point in the appeal process because look how long this appeal process has dragged on. And not to mention the Leafs can't lose without him, right? So it's one of those weird situations that's happening. But stick is to the neck. Stick is to the head area. It's after a play, too. Think about it wasn't as extreme as the Pierre Turgeon, Dale Hunter situation, but there's a difference between a player in a hockey play during a play or at a whistle in the middle of a game, taking a stick to the head area, and after the play when he's skating up the boards. Drop the gloves. You want to take it into your own hands, drop the gloves. At least, you would have had a little bit more respect from non-Leaf fans, right?
Randy, is your mic on?
Thank you very much, Jake.
Yeah,
Let me try that
couldn't hear
again.
him either, right? So I was wondering.
Let me take.
I thought maybe it was me. I was like, wait a minute.
No,
I was saying,
no.
everything I said there, did you hear me?
No, I heard you, but let me repeat what I said, because what I was talking about was the Dale Hunter Pierre Turgeon comparison. And the one thing that I come to is that at least Dale Hunter didn't cross-check Pierre Turgeon to the head. I mean, yes, Turgeon was off balance because he was celebrating, but a cross-check is still a cross-check. And it was in the playoffs, the Turgeon Hunter situation. Hunter got suspended for 21 games.
21 games. Yeah.
21 games. And I mean, I don't know if a lot of people are complaining about that Dale Hunter suspension. Now, that's maybe where Morgan Rielly's clean record comes into play. But I mean, there's just in the media, the thing that really just blew my mind was how justified Rielly was. That Ridley Gregg ducked his head, that Rielly was aiming for the shoulder. I mean, like, it just reminded me as well of the Dennis Wideman situation. Like, if you remember, Dennis Wideman got clocked, and then he was all wobbly going to the bench, and then checks the linesman. And a lot of people were saying how that, oh, maybe Wideman wasn't in the right state of mind, and maybe he didn't really know what was going on. And when I heard the Rielly defense, whether it be on TSN or Sportsnet here in Canada, I just can't believe how like these former NHLers turned broadcasters are standing up for Rielly. I mean, I think it's a real black mark for the game. I really do.
Well, Morgan Rielly is everyone's sweetheart. He defies the NHL, puts the pride tape on his stick. He's married or engaged to Tessa Virtue, and he's just
Oh, really?
quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's this mild mannered guy. Like, he's a very classy guy, well spoken. A lot of people thought that he probably should have been the captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm not a huge Morgan Rielly guy in terms of how they speak about him as a defenseman. I mean, they're 4-0 without him. I've always felt he was slightly overrated in his career, but to compare the Dale Hunter hit, the Pierre Turgeon situation, I think is completely off base. It's not even close. I mean,
Completely off.
Pierre Turgeon did not, slap shot a net into an empty netter. He scored, he scored a huge goal. He scored a huge goal in a playoff game. He was celebrating for about, what felt like 18 minutes, and then Dale Hunter decided to skate and just nail him and just completely cheap shot him. So that was well deserved. But you're right, Chris. Morgan Rielly would have been better off doing the hockey thing, drop the gloves and start pounding away at him. He would not have been suspended at all if he did that. That's hockey. You defend the code that way. But once you got the stick up to the head, it is what it is. It wasn't the right decision. I mean, I think it was emotional. I don't. Obviously, we all agree that Morgan Rielly isn't that type of player, and he lost his mind there. But I think there's some traditions you got to keep within the game. I know that people frown upon the code and have a problem with it, but taking a slap shot right in front of the net like that, to me, is bad. But do you remember that playoff game? Was it a playoff game where the Dallas Star player casually went towards the net and missed it? And then I think it was
Patrick Stefan.
Patrick Stefan.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't a playoff game.
Yeah. Dallas won in overtime, but Hemsky came back and scored the other way.
It was the Edmonton Oilers. So some people were making the point that that's why you just take the clapper right in front of the net to make sure that puck goes in. But I don't know. It was at the end of the day, I think it was justified. Keep your stick down. Those are the things that are important, that you're trying to keep player safety, and you're going to bring up player safety a little bit later on the show here, Randy, and that's another indication that taking a stick to the head could be potentially dangerous to the player, whereas dropping your gloves and start pounding away at the guy with his helmet and his visor on is probably going to be less dangerous to the player.
Yeah.
I think a few minutes left the game too. Ridley Gregg got angry because Jake McCabe got away with a stick on him too. And there's not a lot being said about that. So, coming back after that and the call wasn't made, it was almost like, in your face, I'm going to take a slapper into the net, right? So that hasn't been mentioned a lot, but that actually happened later in the game, right? McCabe got away with one in front of the net, and it should have been a penalty. So,
and Greg was asked about it, and he owned up to it, and I don't think he apologized for it. He just said, "Hey, I was caught up in the emotions of it. We were about to win this game. I did what I did. So that's it.
And how does an injury play in as well? And that's the other issue sometimes with suspensions, where a player gets hurt and there's a bigger suspension because of the injury. Like he was
Yes.
going to be fine afterwards, right? So I think that's why a lot of the Leaf fans were like, "Oh, Ridley Gregg is fine. It shouldn't be a suspension, right?" But it is, right? So
That's stupid. That's stupid too.
It shouldn't change it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you guys definitely bring up some valid points for sure. And Tony, you brought up the code, and as sports fans, we all know various metrics of the code. Taking a slap shot at an empty net, not playing as hard as you can in the last seconds of a blowout game on basketball, in a basketball game, swinging at 3-0, or like stealing a base when you're up by 10 runs or something in Major League Baseball. I mean,
And
I don't
here's
know
another problem. And here's another issue. Sorry to interrupt. That,
go ahead.
with the instigator rule, the way hockey used to be, that shit was quashed in a hurry. And now you have no choice, where you have a guy like Morgan Rielly having to take matter in his own hands, and he doesn't know how to, because that's not his game, right? Teams were stacked with a couple of guys who would make you answer the bell,
That's
right?
definitely.
It was a different time. It was a different time in the league where you had those types of players to answer the bell. Morgan Rielly is not. That's not the type of guy he is. He just
I'm
happened
sorry.
to be on the ice at the time. And no, I know what you're going to say, but I'm saying the league doesn't allow policing of the game like it used to. So this is the kind of shit you're going to get.
Yeah, but I mean, like, and if you knew that I was going to say, I mean, I still don't want guys like Ryan Reeves on my team. I mean, if your one goal is to fight, then sorry, you're not going to make my team. I mean, Morgan Rielly knows better in terms of not cross-checking a guy to the head. I'm sorry, there is zero excuse for Morgan
He
Rielly.
knows better. He knows better, but in the emotional part, that in that moment, that's his reaction, because he's just not that type of player, right? He's not going to drop the gloves, start pounding away. I'm not defending what he did, but I'm just saying,
Sure.
and when you don't have that part of the game in there because of the instigator penalty, But then, are you going to worry about the instigator penalty when you're down 5-2 with 30 seconds left? No, I guess. So who knows?
But I mean, I guess we are now spilling into another topic here of needing super pests and fighters, one per team on every hockey team. I mean, yeah, sure. Back in the 80s and 90s, maybe up until 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was a legit enforcer on every NHL team. And that fourth line for said team was usually a bunch of tough guys. And I like how the NHL has more skill now. I mean, I'm not interested in two fighters dropping the gloves just for the sake of dropping the gloves. I mean,
I'm with you. No, I'm with you 100%.
Sorry, Tony, please.
But I'm with you 100% on that. But I think the problem is young guys today, and it's in all sports, they're a lot more comfortable because they get money quick. I don't think they respect the game as much as previous players did. And they think they can get away with stuff like that. And I think that's why sometimes it'd be nice to get that part of hockey back in, just to keep them honest. But I'm with you. I like the skill. I like to see players be players, but I wish they had a little more respect for the game and just for certain things. You don't want to get rid of all traditions. It's just not in the game. I think it's in society in general. There are some traditions that are worth keeping, right? Some things, codes, and various, I'm babbling here. Sorry, but you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
No,
like,
well,
there's certain things,
I do.
certain things you want to maintain. You don't want to change everything. And I think there's certain parts of the game in any sport that you got to
If you're a purist of any
integrity part
sport,
of it.
if you're a purist fan, you want things to stay the way they were. You don't want everything to be changed, right? It's almost like a lot of baseball fans, like it drives them crazy. Like there's more purists in baseball than elsewhere, but that's probably a game where players respect it more because they have to play for a bunch of years before they earn that big contract. They don't earn that big contract really early on in their career, so they have to perform, making a lot less money. You know, we're going to get into the Blue Jays discussion after, but that's where we're at, right? So,
Yeah, well, I mean, Jake, I mean, you've heard us go on about how the game was in the 20, 30 years ago as it is today. Obviously, you are a younger guy compared to the three of us, but I mean, I'm sure you could appreciate what baseball was like 10, 15 years ago. And hockey definitely did go through an evolution. There were bench clearing brawls. There were a fight every night. And we're not seeing that these days. We're not seeing traditional centers in basketball. We're not seeing starting pitching going 7-8 innings like they did in the major leagues. I guess when it comes to hockey specifically, first of all, do you remember a time where there was a person dedicated to fighting for your favorite team? And if you do or you don't, I mean, do you think that game is that part of the game is still needed?
When I was younger, probably like the early 2010s, the Rangers had Brandon Prust at one point. He wasn't like just doing a fight. He was a decent player. He killed penalties. That was like one of the specialties, but he was a fighter. The Rangers had Tanner Glass at one point. That was probably like the mid 2010s. He was basically just there to fight. He wasn't like a very good player, but he could fight. Since then, the only other guy they've had since probably 2010, which is basically when I started watching sports. I probably started watching sports when I was about 9. So 2010, 2011. It was probably Ryan Reeves. That was only a few years ago. But, he's obviously not a good hockey player. He's had his moments where he's had some hits that, have gotten him in trouble. But I didn't mind him. When they first signed him, I was like, oh, this guy isn't good. He's got a bad rap. Maybe he improved. Maybe he realized if I keep doing this, I'm going to get myself out of the league. So he's obviously off the grid now because he's not a very good hockey player. But
he's on our grid. He's on our grid.
He got a 3-year contract, so he'll be on the grid for a bit.
Yeah, but those are the only guys I've really seen on the Rangers since I started watching hockey. Like I said, 2010, 2011, that were really just there to fight. I don't really think it's that necessity anymore because of how fighting's almost kind of gone away in the league. Like, it's one thing if you have a guy who's like he can really fight, but he'll also score maybe 10 goals. Like, he's a really good penalty killer. He does something else really well. But I just don't. It's almost a waste of a roster spot just because it just isn't needed in today's NHL. At this point, I'm almost like, if you want to fight, go to UFC or WWE or something. Like, it just isn't needed anymore. Like, I don't look. Everyone loves a good fight in hockey. You just don't see it much anymore. You used to see it at least once every game. We just mentioned, that every team you'd have at least one, if not 2 or 3 guys that would, only be able to fight. You don't have that anymore. There's really no point. I don't see another stuff to have on those guys.
Yeah, I guess. Chris, you brought up. Sorry, there's a static thing. I don't know if you guys are picking up on your microphone there, but
there's a hurricane coming.
Yeah. Chris, that may be yours. I don't know. I think it might be yours, Chris. But just anyway, I mean, like, just going on with what Jake was saying there. I mean, yeah, if you want to fight, just go to WWE or UFC. I mean, is it really needed in hockey? I don't know, Tony. I mean, I don't know if I'm really with you on the whole respect for the game thing. I don't mind spending a couple of minutes on this. And the way I see it is that I wonder if these players are respecting the game more because there's dedicating their entire 365-day calendar to working out, to improving their craft. I mean, they're eating avocado ice cream, and they're probably, I don't know about they're definitely not smoking as much as they did back in the day. Like I'll never forget during my journalism days, I was covering Blue Jays practices, and there was a Blue Jays player hacking a dart in between the dugouts there during practice. And it was during those time that season when I was covering the Jays that there was a refrigerator stocked with beer. And now these guys are doing protein shakes, and they're eating brown rice and everything else healthy. I mean, I don't know. I think that players today respect the game a hell of a lot more than 20, 30 years ago.
Well, they respect. I'm saying respecting certain codes of the game, doing certain things to respect your opponent, doing certain things to, you know, oh, sorry, am I on?
No, yeah, sorry, that was my fault. Please, Tony, go ahead.
Oh, okay. They respect taking care of their bodies and this and that. Of course, it's a huge payday for them, so they must, and that has evolved, and I'm okay with that. I'm just talking about certain little things within the game that you think you could run amok and get away with. That's what I mean, respect, right? Where once upon a time you used to have to answer for those antics. Now, I could never, if I never see another fight in the National Hockey League again, I'm not going to miss it. But I'm also understanding of the importance of it at certain moments of the game, right? I get it. I think you eliminate a lot of frustrations, and I think there is a tendency for less serious injuries to happen if you just let guys go for it, go at it, and I think that's the importance of fighting in a game. I think you're less likely to see a headshot. I think you're less likely to see, a slew foot, a guy's knocked out with a concussion on a cheap shot. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what I mean when I say respect. Obviously, they respect the game enough to maintain, stay in shape, but that's your job, Randy. You're supposed to do that. You're getting paid millions and millions of dollars. It's just like all these articles I'm seeing on Vladdy Guerrero, and oh my God, he's in shape. Like that's his fucking job, is to be in shape. That is all you need to do. You get paid millions of dollars, and eventually you're going to want to hit the jackpot like every other major league player at his level has, and he hasn't so far. So what does that tell you? That's your job. That is basic. That is basic as a professional athlete, is to keep your ass in shape. Keep your ass in shape. You know what I mean? So
I think it's also
you misunderstood what I was saying.
Right. No. And I definitely get it for sure.
But I think, Randy, it's more highly competitive now to be in pro sports, right? You could get away with it a little bit more. So, you have to be in shape to maybe keep your job, right? If you're not a high profile athlete, that's the advantage you get. So you're doing it to make sure that you can get that advantage over the next person who's trying to compete, either to take away your job or replace you, right? Or you want to be the guy to replace somebody else.
I think that, look, it's really easy for me to say that if I hit the jackpot, I don't know if I would have the dedication of these guys. I mean, we're seeing so many, the number of players who don't maintain that health physique. Off the top, if you want to throw Guerrero into that list, you could think of James Harden, you could think of Zion Williamson. I mean, there's a lot of guys who really do let themselves go. And I mean, sorry, there's only a couple of guys who let themselves go. And Tony, to your point, they're making the boatloads. And is it really that easy to do, I guess. I mean, I guess it's one thing to stay in shape. It's another thing to stay relevant and to stay competitive. And not everybody was hitting the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning like Kobe Bryant. And we're hearing what Tiger Woods did, just to hit a golf ball. I mean,
It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do, Randy. If everybody was able to do what Kobe does or what Sidney Crosby does or LeBron James, there'd be more of them, right? But there's not, and that's what separates the elite from the great to be good to this and that. There are guys who will do this much. I mean, Sidney Crosby left the All-Star game, flew back to Pittsburgh on the Saturday, whatever, and was in practice the next day with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And this is a team that's not going to make the playoffs, but he's there. He's practicing with them. Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, Morgan Rielly, and William Nylander were not. They were not at practice the next day. So who has 3 Stanley Cups and who doesn't have any? That makes the difference sometimes, right? Kobe Bryant was a stone cold killer. He was a killer. You can compete with that guy's desire. LeBron's the same way, and that's Tom Brady. You said avocado ice cream. That was Tom Brady, right? So that's what separates the great ones from the okay ones.
yeah, no, I definitely get what you're saying for sure. Well, to that, guys, we'll slide over to another topic that is very big, especially in the world of hockey, and that is the safety of those who take part in the game. It was give or take 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, when former NHLer Adam Johnson died in a freak accident in England, and that there's a court process that came as a result of that incident, and it's being played out in the courts. And I mean, there is a call from whether it be those who take part in the or from coaches to improve the safety of players. And I mean, we've seen an evolution of the NHL when it comes to protecting their players. I mean, from instituting visors to mandating helmets. I mean, it was only 30 years ago when the last NHLer played without a helmet. Tony, I mean, should immediate action take place after that Adam Johnson incident? Because we could throw everything regarding that situation to the table here, but you think about Clint Malarchuk, you think about Richard Zednik, you think about Trent McCleary, who didn't maybe get a skate to the throat, but he did get a puck in the throat. Could a net guard have protected him? I think it was a Chris Therien slap shot when McCleary was playing for Montreal. Should the powers that be in hockey mandate net guards?
No, because I'm not a fan of forcing people to do things that they might not want to do. At the end of the day, it's your choice, and we discussed this in a previous podcast as well. When it comes to anything, I don't believe in forcing. Obviously, things like seat belts, they're a different story. But I'm talking about in sports, you choose to wear what you want. Obviously, helmets are a good thing, but it would be nice if they all put them on, for sure, obviously. But I don't think it would fly. I don't think the Players Association would let that fly either. It would be a very, very slippery slope, very sticky situation. I know what you're saying, Randy. In a perfect world, you'd have them all put it on and feel better about their safety. But when you get into this thing of forcing people to do something that's against their will, that they might not necessarily feel comfortable wearing. They might not like it. It might feel constricted to some of these players. I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking, but I'm just not a fan of just blatantly mandating these things. At the end of the day, it's their choice. Turn your mic on.
Your mic, Randy.
Jesus Christ. Thank you, guys. I think more importantly, though, is league officials protecting their product. And they're not doing themselves any favors by having a guy bleed to death on their ice in front of little kids who are either watching on TV or even worse at the arena. That's where I think I stand on mandating this stuff. I mean, I'm sure most of us can remember what happened to Brian Berard, and the guy lost an eye from an errant stick. And from what I remember, Chris, help me out here.
Marian Hossa.
Yeah, it was Marian Hossa, and there was blood gushing out of his eye. And I can't see football players playing the game without the grill across the helmet.
Yeah,
I mean, Chris, you had mentioned to me that you play rec hockey, and through your years from teenager to today. I mean, has your equipment evolved?
Absolutely. Like when I used to play men's hockey, our league never mandated like a visor even. So when I started, I had no visor whatsoever. I did that for a few years. Like I remember taking a puck in the cheek. Then I put the visor on, even wearing the mouth guard. Guys are chewing on the end. I played competitive ball hockey, had the top two teeth in my mouth knocked out on a stick. And these are those things like what Tony was saying about forcing people to do things is sort of against what they are. Like we're all stupid in our own way, and we're stubborn, right? And it was until maybe about a year and a half ago I put the full cage on because I felt like I had all these blind spots on the ice. It was a lot harder to see. But I was just realizing afterwards, all the things that could happen, because you have these situations that are freak accidents, right? And it's unfortunate. Like you do have the players too that take it way too serious as well. And then we talk about that fighting aspect, but it's one of those things. If you're doing something you love to do, and you're comfortable doing it, it's really hard to make adjustments if that's going to affect your enjoyment of it, right? Whether that sounds foolish or not, right? It's one of those things. I bought a new pair of skates last year for the first time in about 17 years, right? So as those things go along, like that's an obvious one. But, like having that cage always and unscrewing it and taking it off would be the case, if I went between my men's league and just going on the ice and playing shinny, right? So it's everybody has the part that bothers me is because for years I never had a visor or a cage. The guys who go out for men's league and a guy wearing a cage and there's a guy not wearing a cage and he calls him a coward and he calls him a chicken because he's wearing the cage. No, like we're the idiots not wearing cages, right? If we're not wearing it. And a guy who's not wearing it, he's trying to pick a fight with a guy with a cage. I had a guy on my team one time got his whole cage ripped right off with it locked on, and he like cut both sides with the visor, with the actual cage on, because somebody lost himself and he wanted to fight him. So those are those other elements that come into the game as well. But if we're talking about that incident, like Adam John, that was a freak accident. I can think back to the Clint Malarchuk. You can think back Mikheyev, right? With his injury, right? These things happen, and they're going to continue happen on some level. Like you have a wear neck guard, something else could happen. What was the Detroit Red Wings player, the defenseman?
Yuri Fisher.
Yuri Fisher on the bench.
Yuri Fisher.
Yeah. So these things are part of sports at some point in time. Like injuries happen. My daughter's rep soccer.
You can't avoid them.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I mean,
them, right? Like
especially hockey.
These incidents that you've talked about, Randy, have happened 4 times within a span of 30-something years.
Sure.
Right? There's 4 incidents that have happened. So they're extremely rare, but it's an inherent risk you take when you play sports. It's just 100%. like when you go to war, you got to expect that you're going to take some shrapnel. right? Like it's just it's a violent game, it's a fast game, and some things happen. Unfortunately, this was just beyond, beyond the realm of reality. Like the way that skate went up and just sliced them in the right spot, enough for him to bleed to death. That's insane. It's crazy, right? Like,
But
It
I mean,
looked like a
I think
roundhouse kick,
these
though, right? It looked
I
like
these
how
are
think
many guys
risks.
are going to do that, right?
I
Yeah,
think
nobody does that. Nobody's good to do that, which is why there's a case
Yeah.
happening because it was funny. It was extremely funny how that guy's leg went up like that. And it should be investigated. We should be looking into that because you know it just it was weird. It was an odd play. That was not a hockey play.
I think Tony, though, for everything that you said, I mean, I think the reality is that 0 is less than 4. And
Yeah,
I mean, 30 years after the fact, we still remember Clint Malarchuk and Richard Zednik and so on. I mean, Jake, you wanted to say something?
yeah. Like with the equipment, I think there's certain things that I feel like guys should be wearing. Like the neck guard in hockey, I feel like you should be wearing. I don't see why you shouldn't. Because because it stops the ability to an extent. You have to get a stick neck because that's very dangerous. Like when it comes to to the cage, like that's when I feel like it's kind of like player's choice. I feel like take you're gonna get hit in the face. That's one's like if you want to wear a cage, knock yourself out. If you don't, just also knock yourself out. Just be aware. You might if you take something to the face, you won't be as protected. It's kind of a tough subject because what we just said. What happened to Adam Johnson was absolutely horrible. At the same token, that's a completely freak accident, and the chances of that happening again is pretty low. But I still don't think I think it'd be a little foolish to not still take measures to make sure it doesn't. Because we could say, the Players Association will have a problem with it, but what happens if that happens to an NHL player? Like, if they weren't wearing a neck guard, like, what would happen? So,
I mean, Jake, and you are completely getting to my
that's just my
point
thought
because,
process.
sorry, please.
I was just saying that's my thought process. Like, Adam Johnson, I forgot what league he played in. Obviously
English, league in England.
playing over in England. What happens if that happens to an NHL player? If they are wearing a neck guard, I feel like I'm like, all right, for the oxen, there's nothing you really can do. But if they weren't wearing a neck guard and it happened to an NHL player, what would the reaction be? Just think about that for a minute. That's
Yeah,
the neck guard should be mandated.
It happened to Clint Malarchuk, who was a goalie and who did have his neck protected, but the skate still got up, right? And it was gruesome. It was awful. He bled all over the ice.
Yeah.
Luckily,
That was incredible. They saved his life.
luckily he survived it. Luckily he survived it. So it has happened, right? I mean, Chris Pronger took a puck off the chest, and basically his heart skipped like a beat, and it was funny because he tweeted out after the DeMar Hamlin situation happened with the Buffalo Bill player, and he tweeted out how what happened to him looked very similar to what happened to Chris Pronger. It looked very similar to what happened to him, where it looked like the helmet just blew up his chest and his heart just skipped a beat right off the bat. And the same thing happened to Chris Pronger. Again, should he wear a thicker chest protector? He did have a chest protector on, right? Like it's just these are freak things that happen in the game that unfortunately are inherent dangers when you play a fast, violent, physical game with top-notch professionals at the peak of their strength, just firing shots at you or coming at you at 30 miles, 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers an hour. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I mean,
I'm not into forcing people to do things. That's all.
I think Tony, where if there is one sport who I always hear a reluctance to change, it's hockey and the NHL. I remember when the Leafs were in Sweden earlier this season, there was a big hubbub of their wearing blue helmets with their white jerseys. I mean, and this is part of the tradition of hockey that just gets clouded to the bigger picture here. And I mean, we obviously don't need to go over and over the same point again. But I mean, if I was hockey, I mean, what are these guys going to do? Not play in the league? Forget the millions of dollars and go play in Russia? I mean, is that what is that? I would love to see that. Mandate neck guards. And then if you don't like it, go play somewhere else. Like, I mean, this is a serious question here. I mean, do you think that this could be a CBA issue where the players will refuse to play when the next CBA is up? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. You know, obviously none of us want to happen what happened to Adam Johnson or to any of these guys that you mentioned to happen to anybody, to any of these players. But I think I think it's smart to take precautions. That's a good point, Randy. Like, if NHL comes out next season and says you gotta wear a neck guard, are guys gonna boycott the league and not play in the NHL and go play in the KHL or go play somewhere else? I don't think they would, but they might. It's kind of like when the NFL made the new rule, like you have a certain kind of helmet, and certain guys weren't thrilled, but the only guy who made a really big deal of it was Antoniou Brown, because he was just that guy's a whole nother story. He can't pull it on it. But every other player with a real conscience, some of them like fine, some of them were kind of like okay, but then they got over it. Like, I feel like the players would get over it. I feel like.
They have all these grandfather rules too, right? Is that going to be a grandfathered rule, right? New players have to wear it, right? Almost like what they did with helmets, for example, right? So there's all these different levels, and that's the issue with the CBA and the Players Association. Like, that's the problem is where are the limits? And like, if you're going to force people, who can you force? Like, really, you could probably only force new players and not force the existing players.
Yeah, very well could be the case. And whether the NHL does do something specific to neck guards, it would certainly be because of what took place in England and with Adam Johnson. So, guys, we're just about to come to the end of our little program here. And we're going to end things off on our rapid fire segment. And we are calling it Straight Facts or Bro Relax. So basically what's going to happen here, fellas, is that I'm going to tell you a statement and have a certain position on it. And if you agree with me, you're going to say straight facts and you're going to tell me why. And if you don't agree with me, you're going to say bro relax. And once again, you're going to tell me why. So Tony, Bank of Montreal has claimed another MLS club. I mean, being the jersey sponsor of LAFC. This is their third club where Bank of Montreal is the main jersey sponsor, along with CF Montreal and Toronto FC. I'm thinking that Toronto FC has had enough. And their relationship with BMO, I believe, will end in 2032. And once that time frame hits, that they're going to look for a new sponsor. Tony, straight facts or bro relax?
Is there a part that says who cares? No. Straight facts, I guess. I mean, it's always possible that you're going to get a new sponsorship. I mean, they were close to getting Pizza apparently a couple of years ago. That the BMO was about to come to an end, but I don't know. I haven't given it much thought about it. I don't know how BMO is so involved in MLS. Have you taken the time to research that, like why they're so involved with MLS sponsorship within the league?
Not me personally. I think maybe they just struck while the kettle was hot, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that their first dip in the pool was Toronto FC, and then Montreal came, and
And then Montreal,
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, like Tony, Chris. I mean, you guys being soccer fans. I mean, there is something about that sponsor on that home kit, right?
but
That
they don't last. They don't last like they used to, right? Like
Well,
as a
changes.
Manchester United, as a Man United fan, I'll always be partial to the Sharp. The Sharp, because I relate Sharp to all their success. In the heydays of the Sir Alex Ferguson, Eric Cantona years, and over the last, I can't keep up with how many different sponsors they've had on the front of their jerseys since.
but Tony, I mean, like
It's
Toronto FC. Sorry, I was just quickly going to say Toronto FC has been in MLS for 2007, and this is their one and only
it's been their
sponsor.
only one, so
Yeah.
it's pretty miraculous that it has been for this long, given the market, given how big businesses are all over the city, and I think eventually it's going to change as well. I mean, someone new is going to pop up and take on a sponsorship deal.
Yeah,
Will pay them more money. That will pay them more money, and they're gonna snatch it.
Yeah, these sponsorship things come up all the time. My oldest daughter plays high level OPDL, and they were North Mississauga, and basically now they're called Liverpool Academy, LFC Academy.
Oh, what age group? What age group is she?
U14. Yeah.
Yeah, get out of here. My
No.
my stepdaughter is playing in that as well. I think she's U13 as well. Sorry, we're hijacking your show.
No problem. She played a year down, same club.
She was playing. Where was you? North Mississauga.
Yeah.
Who's your coach?
Kennedy. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Our coach is Vince. He's an Italian guy.
Oh, Vince was my daughter's old coach. I was his manager. Yeah, it's U14. He coaches U14 rep, right? But LSC.
And sorry, Chris, your daughter's league.
That's
your
crazy.
Daughter's league is Liverpool something.
Well,
their team is called
North Mississauga.
They're called Liverpool FC.
Yeah, they became a high performance club, so all their rep teams have changed over and are using the LFC name. There's LFC teams all around. We're going to a tournament in a few years in Virginia in a few weeks, and there's an LFC Michigan already. So now they're LFC in Mississauga, right?
And this has a link to Liverpool.
Yeah. So there's going to be some online training, and they're going to come and visit for a week. Probably the highest rep is probably going to get a chance to be involved. There is the rep below, because reps changed over the years where you play house league. Now anybody can play rep soccer. They pretty much take your money and they want to build a team. And then depending on how many players they train, then they determine what level they're going to be at, right? So like Vince's team has actually really come a long way, because my daughter was part of his team before. A lot of the players were lost to OPDL.
What's her name? Sorry.
My daughter's name is Victoria.
Victoria? Okay.
And what's
small
yours?
world?
What's your stepdaughter?
Addison.
Okay, so she's new this year, right? So yeah.
Yes, she just joined last year, so that's funny. What a small world.
Yeah, that's crazy. But just bringing that in with the sponsorship thing, right? Yeah.
Soccer is going to become just as expensive as playing hockey in this country. Like before
I know my pocketbooks right now. People don't think soccer's an expensive sport, but my younger one actually is going to be trying probably the same thing, and now I'm going to be like even more poor going on, right? Especially in the winter time when fields availability, you're using the dome and the premium on the turf, because OPDL only trains on turf year round, all games turf. There's zero grass unless you're in a tournament. That's how it works. Yeah. So you need those sponsorships to keep you going, right? So they change all the time. Who knows how long it's going to be? But the only good thing, I guess, like being more of an Italian fan, Liverpool was my team in Premier League when I was growing up. So it could be worse. It could be Man U. So
no, it is worse. Doesn't get it's rock bottom for you.
Yeah.
Or a
Jake, Jake, I know you're not a soccer fan, but I mean, like after hearing about Vince and whatever the other guy's name was, I mean, don't you want to get back in? Don't you want to get into the beautiful game now? I mean,
I'll put it to you this way: when I was 5 years old, I played soccer back home in New York. I don't remember a single detail of it. It was so long ago. At this point, it was 16 going on 17 years ago. After the season, my parents asked me, "Oh, Jake, do you have fun?" I was like, "Kind of." They go, "Do you want to play again next year?" I go, "No." And that was the end of my son.
Randy, this is Jeremy all over again, eh?
Yeah, no kidding. We have Chris and I have a friend, and he was greatest guy in the world. But when it comes to soccer, I mean, it's like we spit on his dead relatives' graves. I mean, like he is just not into it at all. But anyway, getting back to a sport that all four of us are into. Chris, our beloved Blue Jays. I mean, they're always in the news, and not really sure what your thoughts are on the off-season signing. I mean, off-season signings that have taken place, arbitration cases.
Did they get
that have
Otani? I
happened.
can't remember.
No, I
don't think so.
man, that really hurts, Chris. I mean,
I'm tracking the plane. I'm tracking the plane right now.
Oh man, that was just.
I live close to the airport. I think I see the plane right now.
Oh really? You saw Robert Urstadt from? Yeah, good, good. Tell him I said hello.
Yeah.
But you know, Vladimir Guerrero went to arbitration, and apparently the difference was $1.9 million. And Guerrero won his arbitration hearing. But say whatever you want about Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but he is going to get a payday that is a hell of a lot more than $19 million once he becomes a UFA. And I think that this is a real black mark on Shapiro and Atkins, especially if they were so close to signing Otani, or if they were in the running, if they were going to give him $500-600 million. I'm saying that if Shapiro and Atkins and the Toronto Blue Jays do not make the League Championship Series, the Blue Jays will be looking for a new president and a new general manager. Chris, straight facts or bro, relax?
I have to go straight facts because change is necessary when all that's gone on. Because regardless of the product on the field, what looked like was going to happen and what was going to give this positive outcome going through the offseason has turned into us adding Daniel Vogelbach, right? Like Daniel Vogelbach. Like seriously, I like Kevin Kiermaier as well. That's great that he's back. But here is the biggest issue that we have. Their pitching was phenomenal last year, and they couldn't get anywhere. And now they're in a position that if they don't make the League Championship Series, we need to start fresh. Okay, it needs to be clear out the whole office because they missed the boat on this entirely. Because if they weren't even having a chance in this Otani stuff, they had so many more options that could have happened. Now, having said that, the number of baseball players that aren't signed at this point in time in spring training beginning is crazy in this day and age, right? You know, it's unbelievable. There's some of these players like Blake Snell doesn't have a contract. You know, Matt Chapman's not signed yet, right? But I don't understand where it is they're headed right now because the pitching can only get worse this year. And I cannot see with a lineup where Justin Turner is going to be my cleanup hitter. I got some left-handed bats. You know, it's worrisome. And I know Guerrero had a down year last year, but this is part of what you talked about before, why straight facts. This whole nickel and diming with Guerrero, he got picked off second in the last game. You know, it was a poor running mistake. He had an off season. He's out of shape. The fact is, if he's one of your stars, treat him like a star. Things should be behind doors, okay? Because it's nickel and dime. Like I said, what was it, $1.9 million? The difference, less than $2 million, and you're going to give $1 billion to Otani, right? It is very clear from the public eye, and even when we know when they took over, you know, it was very questionable decisions they made. A couple of them they hit on, you know, when they passed on Ray and they got Gosman. Gosman came in, and he's been phenomenal. But there's these other decisions they've made when they changed over. They get rid of Teoscar, and they need a lefty like Dalton Varsho. Like, are you kidding me? They traded away Moreno and Gurriel, you know, for Varsho. So a former catcher, and you got a new outfielder who hits left-handed that hits .211 and barely hit enough home runs. And
it's better than me.
Yeah. But it's like Moreno is a phenomenal hitting catcher. and look how far they went. And what did they not want Gurriel in the dugout anymore with his rally caps, and they didn't like the whole home run jacket business. But you know what? That was a lot more fun of a team to watch than what we saw, right? So straight facts for sure.
I would pay money to wear that home run jacket. I mean, I thought that home run jacket was beautiful. I loved it. Last and certainly not least, Mr. Jake, things in your neck of the woods were quite busy with the NHL Stadium Series at MetLife Stadium over in New Jersey. And the Devils played the Flyers, and your beloved Rangers took the Islanders in overtime. And I am wondering if outdoor games are going to be continuous sellouts. I went to an outdoor game. It was the Centennial Classic at BMO Field, and it was an incredible experience. Would certainly go again. And of course,
went to the Big House, Randy. It was
how was that?
Amazing.
Friend of mine
I drove down on New Year's Eve. The best decision I made. Drove down on New Year's Eve. I missed all of that weather and traffic. All those people that got there late. Yeah, it was a phenomenal experience. It was freezing, but it was a great experience.
And how was I heard the traffic getting out of there was an absolute nightmare.
I stayed one more night and left the next morning really early, so I planned it out pretty good. Came down on New Year's Eve, got in there at around 11:30, and then stayed the game. Then stayed the next night. I left about 7 in the morning the next day, and the brutal stories that I heard. But once again, like you went once, I went once. One time, it was amazing. But I'll let Jake continue.
Jake, I think you were going to say something. Did you have an experience with an outdoor hockey game?
I did not, but a friend of mine, he went a bunch of years ago. He went to a Rangers. I mean, the Rangers have had a bunch of Stadium Series games. They've had 5, I believe. I think they're 5-0. I got that from a link that Randy sent me. Maybe it was one of the times they put the Flyers. No, that was one of the first ones, or maybe it was the Devils or something. But he went to one of them, and he looked very cold in all the pictures I've seen. But he said it was a phenomenal experience. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. The game that I went to, Jake, was around the freezing mark, but beer does some wonderful things, let me tell you. But Tony, please, yeah.
To this, I know it's
no, please. No.
I think, obviously these Stadium Series games, to me, it's overplayed. It seems like there's a lot of them. These teams have taken on this tradition now. The players are coming in uniformed in the same way that, it's a theme to the city. Like the Seattle Kraken had a great outfit coming into
what was it again?
Their Winter Classic game. They're all dressed up like fishermen, and they're all holding the salmon that they toss. That's famous with the market down in Seattle. But did you guys check out what the Devils and the Flyers did on Saturday? Did anybody notice what they did?
If you told me, I would. I think I saw it on the highlights once, but I don't remember
it. It was fucking classic, both of them. It was amazing. Both of them. I'll give a slight edge to the Flyers because I love Rocky and anybody who grew up watching Rocky. But they all came in dressed up like Rocky's training gear, the all gray tracksuit with the towel in the neck and the black Converse. You guys got to go on. You guys have to go check it out. It was freaking amazing. And
so
the New Jersey Devils.
Yeah, sorry.
That was the Flyers, and the New Jersey Devils came in with paying homage to the Sopranos. They were all dressed up in Fila-style tracksuits, Mafia-style tracksuits coming into the game. It was brilliant. It was great. To me, I was watching that, and only that, I couldn't care less about the game at MetLife Stadium. A little more creativity like that for the National Hockey League is always a good thing. I thought it was brilliant. And a couple of guys, and they're all wearing white beaters under, by the way, like tracks. And a couple of guys were walking in with, the tracksuit top over the shoulder and just the straight up Christopher Maldesante white beater coming in. So, sorry, I had to throw that part in. That was my takeaway from the weekend. It was classic stuff. It was so amazing. It was so brilliant. The Rocky, you have to go watch.
I'm glad you did. But I mean, Jake, question to me is that these outdoor hockey games started one a season, one every other season, whatever the case was. Now there's as many as 6. I can't remember the year, but there were 6 outdoor hockey games, and next year I believe there's an outdoor game scheduled in Columbus. But all of these games are sellouts. And Jake, I think in 5 years, sellouts for outdoor hockey games are going to be a thing of the past. Is that straight facts or bro relax?
Bro, relax for me. I mean, look, you're saying every single one's going to sell out. You look at this at the Rangers Islanders game, 6-5 in overtime. Rangers came back down 4-1. You had New York and New York at MetLife Stadium. Before the game, you had a bunch of Jets and Giants players. Did a little introduction, which was very cool. Like you said, the stadium was packed. The game was great. You had you had PK Subban doing a little bit of analysis before the game. It was a lot of fun to watch. I don't see why the attendance would go down in 5 years' time. To me, the games are, for the most part, always really good. I think the jerseys, for the most part, look really cool. I think it's a really good experience. Part of me is thinking about maybe going to one of these days. Actually, a while back in the summertime, my friend actually approached me about maybe going to this game. I told him, I'd love to go if it works out. It didn't end up working out, unfortunately. But these games to me are a lot of fun. I think they're good for hockey. I love how they do all these cool rivalry games like Rangers Islanders, Islanders Devils, Rangers Devils. You did Canadiens and Boston. I think you did that a bunch of years back because Subban was talking about it before that game because he was playing in that game for Montreal still. So I don't see why the attendance would completely disappear and these games would almost disintegrate. At least maybe like way down the road if it gets really old, but that's a conversation down the road. But 5 years time, I think it'll be just irrelevant.
Can somebody please explain to me why they had the Stadium Series during NBA All-Star Weekend?
That was not very well scheduled.
I know that I've been trashing All-Star Weekend as much as I have, but I mean, it's still a ratings boost. I mean, a lot of people are tuning in for basketball, and out of all the weekends you put these 2 outdoor games in the New York, New Jersey area during All-Star Weekend, I mean, I think that was just an absolute mishit by the NHL.
Yeah. One of the worst things to me as a sports fan is when there's 2 like big things that you want to watch both, but they're both on at the same time. Like that's the worst. Like for example, the last 2 years, the Final Four has been on the same days as WrestleMania, and I haven't been able to watch the Final Four the last 2
years. All right. Well,
I mean, would the ratings be any better if it was on the same time as, say, like a Saturday night Golden State Laker game, like a regular season game? The NHL is always in a tough spot because ratings aren't their specialty, and it's through no fault of their own. It's just it is what it is in the United States. Yeah. It is what it is in the United States. So you try and make the best of it. I think the key for them is to get a lot of eyeballs in those areas on them because it's a very regional league. But one thing they did screw up on the Friday night during the skill competition. No, sorry, the Friday night was the celebrity game, I think.
Yeah,
in
that's
the
right.
NBA.
Yeah,
and they had one game on schedule. And it was Arizona versus Carolina, I think.
Right.
If I go back, I can't remember. That's where they dropped the ball, where they had, an extremely off night for the NBA, and that was their game, and they only had one game.
Because it was after the All-Star break and they loaded up earlier in the week. And that's what ends up happening, the hit or miss on that. Yeah, that was definitely a miss.
I think that was more of a drop. That was more of a dropping of the ball than the other thing to me.
I'm sorry. The ultimate dropping of the ball was when the Montreal Expos were before they moved to Washington, and they played the Blue Jays on Canada Day, but the Expos were in Puerto Rico, and the games that series on Canada Day was in Puerto Rico, Jays and Expos. That was the ultimate for me. I don't think anything is
Yeah,
too
no.
close to this.
All right.
Anyway, guys, this has been an absolute treat. I really appreciate all the time that you guys gave for tonight's episode. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely.
My pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Randy. Nice to meet you guys.
Take care, guys. Chris, maybe I'll see you at the soccer fields this summer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
For Tony
All right.
Antoniou, Chris Carrabs, and Jake Cardinale, I am Randy Couray. This is What's Up the Sports podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're well and keeping safe. We'll talk to you next time.